Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the ItCast. I am your host, Nika Sherelle. The ItCast is our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. This episode is brought to you by the International Institute for Sexual Empowerment, and the House of Sherelle. The International Institute for Sexual Empowerment is a new nonprofit that I helped co-found. We are doing amazing work over there. We are also hosting the Global Summit that you see each year, and that is going to be one of our major events. So the Global Summit, if you've been listening for a while, you probably remember it was the Global Sexual Health and Freedom Summit, and it's now known as the IISE Global Summit because people have issues with the word sex, whatever. Which is why we do our work. So that event is going to be February 3rd through the 10th, 2024, and tickets are going to go on sale Black Friday. So go ahead, make sure that you hit the QR code so that you can get information about that. There's going to be a 2-for-1 deal on Black Friday. Don't miss it. All right. As always, check out our weekly Freedom Support Group. It's all online on Sundays at 12 Pacific. That is hosted by Ethology Collective and the House of Sherelle. If you would like to get one-on-one coaching with me, visit my Calendly to book a free connection session. And we want to hear from you. Ask us anything. We go ahead and click on the link in the comments below to have your questions answered. And you can also go to the link tree and submit a question prior if you like. All right, you can get access to our bonus content on Patreon, patreon.com/Nika Sherelle, and you can find wonderful extra clips and videos with our guests. So definitely join us for more of this conversation. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and share with your community. So we're going to dive in. This week's topic is real talk on creating your relationship with sexuality. Today in the booth, we have Kinaes. Kinaes is a passionate advocate of sex positivity and kink. He has immersed himself in the realms of human sexuality and alternative lifestyles for over 2 decades. A seasoned erotica writer, he dedicates his creative expression to exploring and celebrating the diverse aspects of kink. Beyond his literary pursuits, Kinaes is actively championing mental health and fostering a sex-positive mindset, advocating for inclusive and consensual practices within the broader community. All right. Kinaes, welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Glad to be here. Hi.
It's good to have you on the show. All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself, anything you want to share culturally, and then why you chose to do the show.
Okay, well, Cliff Notes here. So I grew up in a very sex negative environment, sex negative country, Singapore, and had to repress my sexuality or orientation a lot. So I've been kinky for a very long time. Won't give you my age now, but I mean, I was kinky in my early teens, and there was really not a lot of information about it, and it was very confusing making my way out in the world, learning about boundaries, learning about sexuality, like how to be me in a wider context. And so, yeah, that's sort of my backstory and leading into why I'm on the show, because I want to share my knowledge and experiences with other people, make it easier, and create a better world.
Mhm. Beautiful, beautiful. So, the first thing that I wanted to look at, we talked about how people have the wrong idea about sex. And,
Hmm.
as I mentioned, it's like it's got a taboo feel to it.
Yeah.
So, let's talk a bit about that and get underneath some of those
Well,
challenges.
sex is a big topic, and like could be like you could have like 10 podcasts about it. But yeah, just to unpack the issue a little bit and zoom in on it, like so a lot of terms get conflated under sex umbrella. When I'm talking about human sexuality, that embraces a lot of things, not just the fucking part. The fucking part is intercourse and lovemaking, which involves genitals usually in some form. But sexuality, how does it affect us? Our orientation is part of our sexuality, our gender expression is part of our sexuality. How does it relate to the broader social context, our community, our religious beliefs? So all this comes under sexuality. Yeah, and I guess why I'm on the show and my like personal soapbox is there doesn't need to be shame about these things. It doesn't need to be taboo about these things. If we put them all under a box, we never shine the light on them, they become frightening, they
Mhm.
become shameful, and it doesn't help anyone. And that's the environment I grew up in. And I think we're trying to do things about not making the environment anyone grows up in. So yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I love that you pointed out that all of these things are sexuality. All of
Mm.
these things impact our sexuality. They impact how we move through the world. And that's been a part of the greater conversation because people shut down when they hear that one word and then they
Yeah.
miss everything else. Everything else. So let's talk about like the relationship that we have with sexuality.
Hmm. Okay, so wow, I could go about this so many different ways. So I get asked this question a lot. What does sex positive mean specifically? I mean, it does not mean we just run around blocking people. Sex positive is cultivating an attitude towards sexuality, which is, I feel, open, informed, and respectful, both of you and anyone else you're being engaging in contact with, and like the greater world. So if for you, like I am not asexual, but like hypothetically, if I knew someone who was like I'm asexual, I only want to have a monogamous relationship with one man, one woman, and that's how it's gonna be. We don't even fuck because I'm asexual. That's totally cool, and that should be respected in its own way. Conversely, you could have another person who is like, I'm polyamorous, I'm bisexual, I have two regular partners, I have two other people I see once in a while, one comet, I swing sometimes, and that's also cool, and it's totally okay. So I feel all of those fall under the broader aspect of sex positivity, and what it is to have a good relationship with our sexuality.
Wow. You know what I just got from your share is that there's a lot of shame around libido.
I would say
Like,
so. I mean, I would say broadly, there's a lot of shame about sex.
well, yes, but also like how much sex you want to have, how little sex you want to have totally dictates how people relate to you in society. And it, like, there can be a lot of stigma behind that. So I'm just hearing this now for the first time and thinking about people in my life where I'm like, oh, yeah, like being asexual is a thing. And I think a lot of people in my life just experience the shame of not actually being into sex more than they actually have the languaging that it's a biological thing.
Yeah. Well, like what I'm saying, it is something different for every person. So, like springboarding of your point about ace, I do know ace people who actually want to have sex, for various reasons. They may not want to do it because of the libido. They may want to do it for the intimacy, for the
Mhm.
aspect because they want to be close with their partner. They still derive a certain kind of pleasure from it in a different way. How it is each person's individual journey. And I feel like all these languages and resources is to give each person a way to relate to it the best way they can. I'm always of this belief like whoever it is you are, as long as you're in touch with that that person that you are and you're honoring your truths as they emerge, that's going to be the best for both you and everyone else. Because everyone is a unique individual and expression of the universe. Yeah. And I mean, all this talking I do about language and resources is just to give people yeah, well, I want to empower people. I want to empower people to be able to do that. It goes back to all that. When I was young, I wish all these resources were available. Yeah,
Right.
but yeah.
Man, don't we all. And just even just languaging.
Mm.
That in itself, when you got words to put to it, it actually becomes more inclusive. It becomes a place where there's space to be held. When I when I was growing up, there wasn't languaging around gender. It was like you were either gay or you were straight. And if you did anything bisexual, then you were definitely gay and in the closet or pretending or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I get
those were
that.
the yeah, those were the words we had. That was the context we had. And the more we bring into this conversation, the safer the space becomes and the more accepting the space becomes.
Yeah, language and labels and words are important to a degree, but something I say to a lot of other people is they give us power and agency in some arenas, insofar as we need it. You see, so let me a personal example is like I have been bisexual since early teens, but I never really had a term for it. I when I went to school, there was just no sex ed. I mean, the sex ed was just like gay people didn't exist. It's just heterosexuals. That's it.
Mhm.
And then please move on. You see? So it's later like, wow, there's this thing. And then I like girls more than guys. I'm like, if I'm bisexual, does it mean that I like sexes equally? Do I? And then, life also teaches you like, so my second girlfriend preferred women. So I'm like, oh, okay, there's, even being bisexual, there's different expressions, there's different language. And then, so that's in that way I find like labels can be explored, they can be powerful. But on the converse side, I also find people who are perfectly happy without labels. So I have another friend who is like, he's more or less gay, So I start asking him, "Are you this way? I mean, do you lean this way? What language and labels do you use to define yourself?" And so his answer for some of my questions was, "I don't know," and that's actually perfectly okay. You don't need to be accountable to other people in society at large. You are who you are, So the language, yeah, so that's essentially the space I speak from. Don't be afraid to label. Don't be afraid not to label.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah,
That just hit me in a special place. Um, and there's two things that came up when you shared that. I was hanging out with some friends, and I was in the middle of a conversation, and I said, well, I don't consider myself to be trans. And before I could finish the sentence, my friend was like, "You don't?" And it was that whole moment of like, oh, wait a minute. I get to play with this language and these labels and examine like what is here? Like what is the assumption that's happening out there about me? What is my truth and the reality? It was such a like amazing learning experience.
mm.
Um and then the other thing that you were pointing out when it comes to relationships, you mentioned how your one of your girlfriends preferred women,
Yeah.
and I'm like, this just comes down to the difference between sex, love, relations, like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
those different
exactly. It's all
right.
not the same. Yeah, yeah. So I think one of my articles I wrote on Fed was that sex, love, play, cuddle, date are all different.
Mhm.
You can have sex with people and you don't fall in love with them. You can have sex with people and you love them. It's called love making. Lots of different things. Yeah, I once had a play session with a trans person. So we cuddled, we played. There was consent about cuddle and play. And then I asked them out and they said no. So that was clear. Like cuddle, play, yes, date, no. And then we still got along fine and it was a great session and then, everyone had fun. So yeah, I guess part of what I'm here to talk about today is like, yeah, breaking it down, one term does not need to mean everything. The term sex becomes very meaning laden. That's the right word. It gets conflated with a lot of other things. The moment people hear sex, they think, oh, you must be bonking, you must be in a committed monogamous relationship. I'm like, no, not really. Even you split down committed monogamous relationship, committed monogamous relationship. There's lots of different ways that can happen. You can be
Yeah.
committed monogamous and you swing some of the time. You could swing a lot of the time. You could be like, yeah,
What is
So
compatibility like?
yeah,
Yeah.
boundaries. It goes back to I think core principles. I talk about this a lot. Yeah, like I said, earlier, openness, being true to yourself, respecting everybody, and healthy boundaries, and that covers a lot of ground. Whatever kind of relationship you are in, it covers a lot of ground. Like,
Yes. Oh man. Um I love that. I love that. We talked a little bit also about marriage. And so, like looking at breaking down all those different things, when we throw the concept of marriage in there, it changes stuff from a societal perspective.
yeah,
So yeah. So the whole conversation around monogamy, committed relationship, all these different things, and now this social weight.
yeah, yeah. So then this is well, I can say a lot about marriage. I personally don't believe in the concept of marriage. I know other people who do. Oh, I mean, as in they do, they don't believe in the concept of marriage. But it's a social construct that's been around for a long time. But I think it's important that people realize it is a social construct, and it has changed in its meaning to humanity for hundreds of years. If you look at marriage back 200 years ago, 300 years ago, how it's considered in different social contexts, whatever, whatever, whatever. I'm not going to deny that marriage exists. Obviously, people get married, But what is marriage to you? How does it occupy the weight in society? So there's this book called The Relationship Escalator, and I think we take this a lot for granted. Like what society thinks when you say the word marriage, how it goes in people's heads is that first you get married, then you buy a house together, then you amalgamate your finances, then you have children, and more or less this order. And not necessarily. There's lots of different kinds of marriage. You know, even within monogamy, like there's kink, there is swinging, there's whatever. Do you even need to get married? Like, can you cohabit? You know,
Mhm.
if you cohabit, can you will your assets to a partner? You know, and in how should I put it? It is a big question because in countries in which gay marriage is illegal, it has very real ramifications. Like I had a friend once, a lesbian friend once, like her partner's mother was in hospital, and the
Mhm.
fact that she was not legally married to her partner did actually pose a problem. You know, does she have the right to go? Because when she went to hospital, they're like, "Who are you?" And she was like, "Her wife," and they're like, "No, there's no her wife here." And then there was a big deal. You see, so yeah, I'd like to examine
Mhm.
like what exactly
Yeah,
does marriage mean? You know, how does it impact people? And it doesn't always need to be this one single, you know, tunnel vision way that a lot of people look at marriage. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This has me double back a little bit to what you were saying before, where you might want to cuddle with this person in this relationship, you might want to play in this relationship, but you may not actually want to go out with the person. There's a lot of, I want to say, like, shame in that space too. It's like that obligation. And I think a lot of this relationship stuff comes down to that word, but it's like, if I like you in this way, now I feel like I have to commit to you in all of these other ways. And that's based on the social normative aspect.
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it, and it can pop up in a lot of different contexts. I feel self knowledge is very important.
Hmm.
It's good to know like what you yourself feel about yourself, about relationships, and about this whatever relationship you may particularly be in this moment. We all live in a broader social context, so we can't do anything about it. We can't just make it.
A what?
We all live in a broader social context, and we get, you know, a lot of messages from the media, from our parents, from whatever. But self knowledge is an important step in which
Yeah.
we are able to figure out with all these resources, this is who I am in this space in this moment, and be able to communicate that. Be able to communicate that not just to ourselves or whoever else we are seeking to be in a relationship with, whatever the relationship is like, whether it's a play space, swinging, marriage, whatever. Yeah, that's actually what it really boils down to. I feel that this can, you know, a lot of common relationship problems can be solved by, well, would I make that statement? Okay, maybe it's too broad, but I mean, I feel it's an important step. I feel it's very important step in any kind of relationship to be able to have that determination and self knowledge. Yeah,
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah,
um Digging down into the business of marriage, um looking at it historically, one of the things is that at a certain time it was about business, joining nations,
yeah.
helping families with the wealth. It was a number of things, and it wasn't about love, and it wasn't necessarily about sex. It was a joining of unions that I don't even think was about the two people involved.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the kings and barons, why they married, it's basically social economic reasons. It wasn't that really. I don't think love had anything to do with it. I think love and marriage only became conflated like maybe like 1950s. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, broadly speaking, very broadly. I'm not a history professor. Yeah, but how do I put it? It does go back to my previous point. You have to decide what it means for you,
Yeah.
what it means for
Yeah.
you, what it means for the person you are getting married to. I mean, once again, we live in a broader. People are going to tell us things about marriage. You know, our church, if we go to church, our
Mhm.
parents, society, whatever. But they're not getting married. We are. I mean, the person getting married is the person getting married. So they should know essentially what they're signing themselves up for. You know, for
Yeah.
better or for worse, what does it really look like? And it's okay. I think it's okay to not know everything at the start, but to have a good foundation. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
I
And
have a good foundation.
You
Good.
made the point about your friends who are lesbians and
Mm.
the whole wife aspect. There's the element of marriage that involves the taxes. Like, there's these things that are
Yeah,
still
yeah.
business associated.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the important steps to understand. Like, and this is not an anti-marriage conversation or anything like
Oh, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if
Like,
you wanna get married, I'm all for it. Like, I
right.
support you 100%. Like, yeah. Yeah.
When you're making that partnership, like, it is probably healthy to think of it a little bit like a business, just because of the way that it operates differently than other relationships in society. um
Mm.
Side note thought. Anyway, um you brought up church. You brought up church.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of the world we live in. It's like I'm not gonna wait and say like marriage and church don't exist. You know, what I mean, they exist. Yeah.
Right. So, but let's talk about some of the spiritual teachings. I know that came up before when we were looking at the dogma around spirituality and sex and those things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I could say a lot about that as well. Okay, so one thing that comes up myself, I'm a pretty spiritual person. I have read a lot of spiritual texts, which is I'm not going to talk about like I mean focus only on one aspect. If you look at once again the core principles of all the religions, they actually talk about sexual misconduct more so than anything else. What is unethical? They don't really speak so much about like it gets conflated with adultery. I mean, like Jesus said, thou shalt not covet another man's wife. But I do know poly Christian people. I mean, like, thou shalt not covet another man's wife. I mean, if we are dealing in an ethical manner, we're establishing our boundaries, I don't feel that that's ethical conduct. Interestingly enough, every poly person I know is very down on cheating. The cheating is wrong. That is wrong.
Yeah,
It's unethical. Yeah. So once again, you look at Islam, Buddhism, whatever. It's always sexual misconduct. That's the
yeah,
problem. Do not do anything unethical.
yeah.
And certain stuff just I think gets overly magnified, like Christianity and gays. Like there's one part in the book of Ezekiel, like one part, like everybody focuses it like a laser. And what I mean, you're talking about religion now. You look at the broader context, it's actually the book of Ezekiel is actually talking about what you're going to say, like this is how you treat guests. You have to see
Hmm.
the context is like how you treat guests in your house and stuff like that, you see. So I feel that it just really gets the dogma takes over. The dogma
And
takes over and then it becomes very narrow, but like don't do this. Like you do this automatically become a bad person. So
mhm,
there's no talking about, you know, consent, respect, and boundaries. Yeah, yeah.
right. And so in Ezekiel, you're speaking directly of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That whole.
Uh, the passage I'm talking about is man shall not lie with man. That's abomination.
Oh, so there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
like one part
sexuality.
in the Bible, and then like the rest of the time, Jesus is talking about love your fellow man, love your fellow man, love your fellow man. He says it like a few hundred times, and it's like one part there's this, and then people sort of focus on it. I'm like, well, I don't get it. I mean, I know a lot of queer Christians myself,
Well,
and yeah,
the reason why I asked that specifically is because I know the part about, like, so the angels go into the town and they're staying.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, and then the people who are housing them basically throw them to the wolves, and there's a lot of really consent violation and rape, but that story is utilized to prove that homosexuality is bad and wrong, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's rape. That's not being consensually gay or
yeah,
whatever else
yeah,
we're
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about.
exactly, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so it does get magnified. And then there are some beautiful gay stories in the Bible that have no negative inference whatsoever. You never hear about those.
Yeah, it's a lot like I mean, I don't want to. I'm a Christian myself. I don't want to paint like every religion with the same strokes. Like it gets conflated a lot with the ego. I mean, historically, you have to look at like the church sought for a lot of control over
Mhm.
people. They sold indulgences in the Middle Ages, everything. So I mean, once again, I'm not anti-church, anti-marriage, everything. It's just understanding the broader context. Like, why were these messages passed down to us? How are they still relevant or not relevant in the modern context? I think it's a lot more beautiful to look at all those values of, open-heartedness and respect and consent, which you can find in all the major religions. I would say more so than all the sex negative stuff that comes up. I think yeah. That's a big topic. I mean, I don't know. I don't feel I can do it justice in like a few minutes, but yeah, that's all I have at this point. Yeah.
No, we're doing great. So we spoke earlier about poly people and how they don't believe in cheating, the Bible, not to covet another man's wife, a number of these things. And what that brings up for me is the conversation around fidelity. Like
Mm.
actually having a system in place where it does breed honesty and communication and integrity. And that's one of the beautiful things about having these open conversations, because then it's not cheating or it's not, and I'll say illicit affair, because I do think that there can be affairs that are not like that are completely consensual. It's just
Yeah.
a whole different type of relationship. And so I think that that's a really, really huge key in how you develop your relationships and your relationship to sexuality overall.
Yeah, there's a concept in the poly world, poly fidelity. So it's some I had a friend once tell me, no, isn't poly every man's dream? I'm like, wow, that is wrong on so many levels. It's sexist. It's just like, no, I just cut you down right now. I mean, yeah, but yeah. So I mean, even in poly relationship, what are your boundaries? I know poly couple, well, not poly couple, four people. In a committed relationship, about 30 years going strong. Yeah, they only love and sleep with each other, and then there are other poly couples. I know one's like maybe 10, 12. They are primary with each other, but they do have other relationships on the side with full informed consent of everyone. So to your point, that is a broader spectrum of what does fidelity mean? What's it about? It's about trust. I trust you to maintain the boundaries and the agreements that we've agreed upon
Yes.
mutually. And that's important to us. How does that work out in the broader scheme of things? And yeah, and there are lots of words and terminologies and stuff you can look about. There are models. I think there's a poly chart that someone came up with a few years ago. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, to your point about illicit affairs, some people are okay with don't ask, don't tell to a degree. Like
Right.
I personally am okay with that. If I mean, I'm single right now, but if I had a boyfriend and girlfriend and then they had some activities on the side, I would be like, do it. I mean, whatever you do, I trust you to be an adult about it. I do need to know at some point, but you
Right.
don't need to tell me everything. And then once again, that's different for other poly individuals. I have another poly friend who's like, tell me, but I don't want to hear about intimacy. Like,
Mm,
I think a ground rule is like tell me, because the foundation of polyamory is informed consent. If not, it's cheating.
right.
You can't just
Right.
like I am just going to sleep with whoever I want and never tell anybody, and then you just lying. Yeah.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
that,
that's a broader. I mean, that's the broader point I'm making about fidelity, which is like it's about trust, boundaries, and informed consent, which are beautiful values.
they really are. Yeah, they
Yeah.
really are. Um, oh gosh. Uh, I'm barely in my first poly relationship. And oh God. There's so many places I could go with that. But the polycule, so like
Mm.
that whole conversation, the term where you were talking about like four people and then it branching out further and further, it can be very interesting, but it's good to know kind of how your tree branches if you're gonna be in that kind of space and relationship. um oh gosh, there was something. ah it'll come back to me. um
Did you want to talk about molecules specifically, or like how does
no,
it?
but go ahead and talk about it. It'll come back to me.
So actually, just to keep the record straight, the four people polycule that I was talking about is actually closed. The other one was open, but it could be any configuration. It can be any configuration. But what I feel relates back to what I feel about this relates to back what I said previously, which is that yeah, once again, self knowledge. What does it mean for you? Everybody in the polycule has to be more or less on the same page. You can't just like I want to open the polycule and then you other people don't want to open it. It's but once again back to mutual respect and trust.
Mhm.
And yeah, so how does it work for you? How do you envision it working out in the future? How has it worked out or not worked out in the past? Yeah, these are just all conversations to have um, at a certain point. And
Yeah.
how do I put it? Another point I make, you have all these conversations and language until you don't. There comes a point in which it's internalized enough, and you have the intuition and the flow comes to you, and I think it becomes less and less. You still need to do it because people still need to communicate, but it becomes less and less onerous. And I don't want to give anybody listening to this the wrong impression that, oh, it's going to be so hard. There's going to be so much homework in order to be polyamorous. And then what would everybody, no one will do it. Yeah, but these are just things that you sort of learn, and I feel they become integrated into your relationship style organically over time.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say earlier. So, the whole don't ask, don't tell. I used to think that I wanted to know all the stuff. Like
Mm.
I'm barely in the relationship, but I'm like, yeah, I want to know. Give me all the details. And two details in, I was like, no, I'm good. Keep it to
Yeah.
yourself. Don't bring
Yeah.
home any diseases. We're good.
Yeah.
And so it was a very interesting learning moment, a part of the discovery of what this looks like and means. Because I was raised Christian in a very cis het monogamous world and context, and so even all of these ideas and terminology is all brand new, but it's a lot healthier of a way that I've seen things. Like it's healthier than what I've already seen happening without communication.
Yeah, it does actually really go down back. I mean, why I keep on harping on the principles is because really the principles are, really valid in almost every kind of relationship. I would say every kind of relationship. Yeah. The issue I think with um it's been a shame. The shame and the ability not, I mean, the disability, the fact that you can't talk about it makes a lot of problem. Because even when you look in let's say, you mentioned Christianity, the whole cishet, white dominated, like, marriage for life model. Even in those models, you got to communicate a lot. It doesn't just
Yeah.
magically happen. I mean, I know beautiful long term monogamous relationships as well as beautiful long term polyamorous relationships, and they're all about communication. And, how do you keep
Mhm.
the marriage alive or whatever? And then it's communication. How do you use it? Like, it's just that in the cishet context, the playbook is a lot more. You take it for granted. Like I said, the relationship escalator. It's like, doesn't everybody do it this way? And when you step into the poly world and the alternative sexuality world, it can seem scary at first because nobody tells you, you don't know what's going on, you see. But what I've seen again and again happen, and what is my own personal experience, is that uh that deeper truth inside you will emerge. Yeah, if you are like meant to be monogamous, and once again, I love monogamous and everything, and that's true for you, and it will naturally emerge as well. Yeah. And
Mhm.
there won't be I don't think there will be any context in which, kindness, honesty, trust will not be good
Right.
demonstrated. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's
even if you have to make, I mean, let's be real. Sometimes difficult conversations come out in relationship. Who's gonna bring the kids to school? Who pays for the blah blah blah? I mean, these things happen. But if we can have these values leading us, be willing to make it. It's gonna be easier rather than harder. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I completely agree. I mean, every type of relationship involves work. And it's really funny. I discovered at a certain point, I'm like, I'm still single. I think I might be afraid of commitment. Like, because it always gets to that point where you have to be able to have certain conversations and go through certain things and grow in that way.
Yeah.
And it can be very, very confronting.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So, gender roles. We talked a little bit about that. And so, as we were talking about marriage and we're talking about the constructs of normativity, I think that that's another area that we could look at and, talk about why there's so much pressure around marriage.
Wow. Okay. Gender roles. I just gonna for the record just put myself on a limb. I think gender roles are kind of BS in the sense that they're social constructions. There's no law in the sky that says that men cannot wear dresses and cook, and like whatever and any of this stuff. Like, yeah, it's more societal constructions, which I guess had some value if you look historically in certain contexts. Men have greater upper body strength, most biologically, and so they worked in then society happened a certain way, and there's a patriarchy. But none of this is, how do I put it? None of it is set in stone. I mean, you look at the workforce now. I mean, women earn a lot more than men quite often, you know?
It's
Yeah,
true.
and so it does go back to my point. I say, what do these things look like for you? You know, if you're in a relationship, do you feel gender roles are even relevant? I don't. I don't. Yeah,
I
but I
love
mean,
a man who wears a
yeah,
kink.
I just go out there and say that I don't think they're relevant. And you know, how does this all influence how your relationship and marriage? And yeah, it gets back to the same points I've been making. What does it look like for you? You know, I mean, if you agree with society, that's actually also okay. You know, then you're making the empowered decision for yourself to say that, yeah, I think this is okay for me the way to have my relationship. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I actually have known people in the kink scene who are reasonably what you would call conservative. I don't want to use a label, but you know, it's just the word conservative. Is that, yeah, I want to keep house and home, and I believe my husband should make all the important decisions. I'm like, as
Mhm.
long as everyone is on the same page with that, that's okay. You know, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
But
it's about,
I
sorry.
guess what I'm saying this whole podcast is don't take it for granted that that's going to be the only way for everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, I like that. I like that. That actually points to the conversation we're having around tolerance. And it's like, why does what I do in my bedroom affect you at all? And vice versa. So, yeah, I like that. I like that. You also mentioned that your journey, like basically your journey is your choice. So
Yes.
everything that is happening around sexuality, like we get to choose however we design it.
Yeah.
So,
You this is in a sense you can't really run away from choice in this, even if you like say you agree with like how society, that's also a choice you're making at some point. You choose to go along or you choose not to go along. You see, like monks make that choice, you know. My own religious values are such, so by adhering to these religious values I choose to make decisions. And then once again, different monks, some monks actually get married, but let's not go into that. But yeah, the choice aspect and the self-knowledge aspect are just very important. You're owning the decisions you make. And also I something that I think doesn't get said enough, forgive yourself for not making the best choices at certain points when you didn't have the information at point. Because people change, society changes to some degree. And you know, sometimes we make choices based on you know things that weren't true or were true at the time but were not true to you yourself. So you, I won't say run away from personal responsibility because it's very immature and not cool, but forgiveness is an important quality both for yourself and other people when you
yeah.
make choices. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I want to say on choice. Yeah.
If I knew now what I like, if I knew then what I know now about dating and relationships, there's quite a few relationships that I would not have ended. Like I would still be with those people, and the the social construct of what I believe to be like right and wrong and shameful and good and bad and all these different things um actually that really hurt and kind of left me hurting a lot of people because oh
Mhm.
if you don't want this fantasy vision of what's going to happen then I don't have time for you in my life. And I don't know, it's kind of a crap way to be, but we'll address that in therapy. So
Well, that's what has come out from a lot of people, which is why I'm glad to be on this podcast and talking to a lot of people about it. Again and again, people keep on telling me that, wow, I didn't even realize we could question social values. You know, I didn't even realize like women could be on top. I mean, just a very basic thing like that. You know, I can be man and I can be submissive. Like, is that even allowed? Are they going to tax me for being a submissive guy? You know, all that kind of stuff. You know, so even this, what I would say is like pretty fundamental, pretty basic, seem to be freeing for a lot of people. You know, I think just having that space, that option, to embrace that is empowering.
yeah.
You know, I can be that way. There's nothing wrong with. I would go so far as to say there's actually nothing wrong with being whoever you are and doing whatever you do as long as it's ethical.
And it does not make you less of a man or
Yeah,
a woman, but particularly a man if you are more submissive. It doesn't make you less of a man. It doesn't make you less of a woman if you are considered to be masculine or whatever these things are.
right.
It's all that social normativity. So yeah, I love that you said that. I love that you said that.
Well, I say it to a lot of people. It's not the first time. It won't be the last time I say it. It's just I say it to a lot of people. Just being able to realize that you have a choice. I mean, go back to my the previous topic, choice, and that being willing to deconstruct, all these values that we take for granted. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, just that reference point. I don't know, is the right word. Reference point, viewpoint is just. I feel it's been empowering for me. It's been empowering for a lot of people. I know. And once again, like I said, if that reference point makes sense to you, if all you want is a long-term monogamous heterosexual relationship, that's also cool, and that's really awesome for you. My own, I don't know if beef is the right word. I have gotten annoyed. I mean, let's be honest. I'm a human being. I've gotten annoyed when people just shove it down my throat. They
Hmm.
assume like, oh, it must be this gender. Da, 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 da. I'm like, no, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
Uh, I had to take a second to look it up because there's this word that gets thrown around a lot in my community in reference to submissive men. It's called simp. And I don't know if you
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I've
and I'm
heard
like,
it.
it's such a horrible it's
Yeah,
a horrible phrase. And I don't know if it's an acronym or not, but it's that like you're not good enough if you want to be submissive. And I personally love a man in a dress who likes to cook
for
and
sure.
whatever, like, and it does not make him any less of a man.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Terms and labels, like I said, can be a bit tricky now and then. Like tranny, to some people it's like I gonna punch you in the face. You say that word, and some people it's like, yeah, it's okay. They themselves use it, that kind of stuff. So like, I would once again I would say always err on the side of respect. Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
slang is okay, fun around. I mean, nobody, I mean, we don't want to lose the fun and romance in any of this, but just always be respectful about how you're using it, who you're speaking to. Yeah, and I feel like as long as that, like, basic etiquette, make sure you're coming from a good place, make sure, the space you're using it is safe. Yeah, that's how I would feel about slang in general. Because like slang is gonna pop out around sexual terms a lot. Like, probably like what's a unicorn? What's a dragon? People will use these terms, like swingers have what's that? Soft swap, hard swap.
Now
So
you
like, yeah,
have to define unicorn and dragon.
yeah. Yeah.
It's
So I mean, yeah, no shame in not knowing lingo. You can always learn, but I guess the point is if you're going to use slang, be very certain of the context you're using it in, and be very certain that you are using what you think is the meaning of the word is actually the meaning of the word in the other person's head. Because it's very easy to get it's very easy to slip in slang, like, in terms of like they them in non-binary, like, some even the most well-intentioned people slip up. Because in school, usually, I mean, now it's changing, but usually there's a third gender. Yeah. So I just I guess while we're on this topic, I urge for more respect and open-mindedness for all people. But even the people who are, being misgendered is wrong. I mean, definitely it's not cool. People should not misgender you, but also be willing to consider that the other person, they may not be doing it like
exactly. Yeah.
purpose. It may just honestly be a slip of their tongue. They didn't know,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I got. Yeah.
And there's definitely a difference between a slip of the tongue and intentionally misgendering someone. And I think those wires get crossed because it can be a lot. Like I'm totally gender non-binary and I slip up all the time just because it's such a new way of doing things. It's not a new concept, but now we've got new ways of doing things that are becoming more and more popular, and it's valid and it's valuable.
Mm-mm.
So go ahead before we wrap up. Tell us a bit about your work.
Oh, this is where I could do my shameless self promotion. Okay, well, I've been doing this for some time, I guess. My main website is Tomato of Justice. That is my vanilla. I was actually, well, I've gone ahead and done it anyway. Like, wasn't actually sure about my vanilla persona, my king persona, but anyway, that's where my vanilla work is. I'm gonna look at my kink work and my erotica. That's on my Fat Life anyway. Kinaes at Fat Life. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, all my stuff is there. I write erotica. I write basically just stuff about sex positivity. I write poetry about kink. I don't do this for a living. Maybe one day, yeah. But I mean, if you like what I'm saying here, most of the same values are in my work, and yeah, going to that. Yeah, as it says in my bio, I'm also really huge on mental health. I felt that kink has been very healing for me in various ways. Yeah, but I haven't been able to really, merge my, but I still sort of have a, split between vanilla and kink life. But yeah, everything I'm telling you today, I guess, is more focus on the kink aspect. So yeah, I don't talk too much about it. My link should be self-explanatory, and yeah, just go check it out. I write under. No, no, it's all there. I don't know about you with information. Yeah, so it's all there. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And then it did mention do you have any specific advocacy work that you're working on right now?
Nothing formal. What I do is just generally talk a lot. What I've been doing this whole podcast is I just do in general. I mean, I have given talks in my community about like neurophysiology of kink, boundaries, everything I'm talking about here, wherever I'm called. I just generally do it on a person to person basis. I get a lot of people asking me these questions. Like I said about this submissive man thing comes up. Not the first time I've heard it. Yeah, the document I have on my Fed, like my Kink 101, actually just arose organically out of a lot of conversations I had with newbie Kinksters. They kept
Mm.
asking the same questions again and again and again and again, and I'm like, after like the 20th time, I was like, maybe I should write this down for you. Like maybe I should write this down for you. And amazingly, when I Google, I mean, I always Google. I mean, who doesn't Google, right? When I Google, there wasn't. There were resources, of course. I mean, I'm not going to say the only person on the whole planet has written this, but there didn't seem to be a concise document that spoke to the questions that people were asking. So I wrote it, and it's short, and I mean, reasonably short, and people seem to like it. And at a certain point in time, I might want to do more in that direction. But that's all I got for you right now. Yeah, I
No,
mean, I don't do formal. I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I don't do formal advocacy work. I just talk about this where I can. Yeah.
got it. Well, speaking of liking to talk a lot about all this stuff, Kinaes, you are going to be one of our featured speakers at the Global Summit coming up. We are very much looking forward to having you on and talking about your work. Um,
Be able to commit for one workshop, and I'm not sure beyond that.
No, understood, understood. But yeah, it's very exciting that we're going to have you there. It is a global summit, so so you're coming in from Singapore, and we want to make sure that everybody out there knows the amount of reach that we're going for, the things we want to take care of and do, and have as many voices in the conversation as possible. So
Mm.
if you actually have anyone that you want to refer to this work who might be interested in speaking or attending the summit, please send them my way through one of the submission forms, and also stay in contact. The sale's coming up on Black Friday. So anyway, um, love my plug too. Okay. So, Kanias, thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure.
It's really, really amazing having you in this conversation and getting to be a part of the work you do.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't do this full time, but like my bio says, I am a passionate advocate for all this material. I still feel that there's a lot more that needs to be said in both arenas, sexuality and mental health. And I probably just keep on doing this. I probably just keep on doing this. I just had like to have these conversations with whenever it comes up, and whenever it seems to make a big difference with the person, you can sort of see them light up.
Mhm.
A smile, a very genuine smile comes on their face. The energy shifts, and that's really what keeps me going. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
Nice. Healing. Oh, all right, everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the It Cast Real Talk on Sex, our community outreach podcast that increases diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. As mentioned, we've got some events coming up. You can see both of us at the the International Institute for Sexual Empowerment's Global Summit, uh, IISE.
It's quite a
That
mouthful.
it is a mouthful. We call it IISE. But everybody's afraid of the word sex, so we had to figure out how to slide it in there on the slide. Don't tell anybody. So, um, so that'll be February 3rd through the 10th, 2024, and tickets are gonna go on sale on Black Friday, November 24th, and there will be a 2-for-1 special. So go make sure you get those. As always, check out our weekly freedom support group talking about supporting mental health and sex positivity. We do that. It's all about healing shame, and you can come and talk about whatever's there for you. That is all online Sundays at 12 p.m. Pacific, and that's hosted by Ethology Collective and the House of Sherelle. If you want to get one-on-one coaching with me, you can visit my Calendly to book a free connection session, and click the oh sorry ask us anything. Send in your forms with your questions if there's anything that comes up that you want to have us answer or ask on the show. Access our bonus content on Patreon, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and share with your community. See you next week or week after.